Hi there, I'm Johanna Lee, and today I wanted to talk about three ways that you can use pivot tables in a real life example. And so these are three use cases that I actually use with my own budget spreadsheet that I thought might be helpful to walk through and see if maybe you guys can use them for your own personal use as well. So as you can see here, this has been shown on another video that I have, but basically what it is just going to have your date, the day of the week, the vendor, the category of which the purchase was made, and then the total dollar amount. So a lot of credit cards now, you can export all of the data, which is great because it will give you actually a category for that. You can look through and see if it's correct because it differentiates between supermarkets and restaurants and bars, which for my personal spreadsheet here, I do not. So food is food for me. First use case though comes about from work. So through work, I have an FSA, a flexible spending account, where I can attribute dollars to my subway pass. And those that are familiar with FSAs, it's kind of a use it or lose it situation. So you get pre-tax income put on a card that you can use for certain purposes. And because it's use it or lose it, I feel like I don't take maximum advantage because I'm worried that I won't get the benefit going forward. And so what you can do is you can take historical data and kind of make a little more informed opinion on how much to contribute to your FSA. And so what I can do is I'm going to create a pivot table. It's on my quick access bar, so it's Alt 1. And then I will enter twice and it'll create a new tab for you. So what I'm looking at here is I'm going to take the vendor up to the filters. And the reason for that is because the subway is MTA. So I'm really only wanting to look at those charges. And then what I can do is I can do a total. And so because that is a number value, that column, what that means is it'll automatically place it in that values section of the pivot table fields. Then the next thing that I want to do is look at the date. And so as you can see here, we've walked this through in a different video, but basically what you have here is you're going to have your years, quarters, and dates. And the reason why it's done that automatically, so if you have a date field that doesn't do that automatically, what that means is that there is a date that is not formatted like a date within that column. So just double check to make sure that that is the case if it doesn't populate like you saw on the screen. So what I'm looking at here, I don't really care about quarters. So I'm going to take that out. And what I'll see here is that I spent $11 in February, 120, 120. And so what I can do is I can click on average number and kind of come to a conclusion on how much I should put pre-tax income away for commuter benefits. And so for me personally, I do $100, but as you can kind of look at trends for your own self on how often you go into the office maybe and seeing the purchases that you make related to that vendor of MTA. So I think that's a great use case. Another good use case is also related to FSA. So or HSA if you have one, and that's a health spending account. And so what I had learned recently is that sunscreen is actually a qualified purchase. So which means that you can take use pre-tax dollars in order to pay for sunscreen. And so, I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm very pale, so I do use sunscreen quite a bit. And so what I can do is if I know where I purchase my sunscreen, so maybe it's CVS or Walgreens, etc., I can pivot similar to the one that we just did where it's on the vendor. But if that's not the case, I also have a notes tab here. And so one of my notes is when I buy beauty products. So we'll take a look at the category here, and I'm only looking for B, which is beauty products for me. And then what I'm looking at from a notes perspective is going to be that sunscreen tag. So I will pull this up here. And what I will do is I will type in Sunscreen. I think I purchased sunscreen with multiple things, so I'll just make sure I have all the things that say sunscreen. And I'll do select multiple items here. That's where you can click multiple things to filter. So I'm glad it actually happened this way. I would have to take out the Fitbit charge in order to have a qualified purchase there because I just really want the sunscreen amount. And so say for me for this purchase, I want to see how much total for like the year that I spent on sunscreen. So if I go to date and I am just looking at years, what I can see is that 2022 is only halfway through, but I've already spent $81 on sunscreen. And so, my normal year would be around 200 on sunscreen. And so, one of the financial advice that I've received in the past is if you can really minimize what you take home and pay for pre-tax, you're really going to save a lot of money. So think through all of the things that your work offers. If you're fortunate enough to have a work that provides an FSA or an HSA, and use these pivot tables to your advantage. I think it's a really cool way to kind of pivot this detail. And the last one is going to be a little more applicable to everyone. So another financial advice that I had learned is sinking funds. And there's plenty of videos on sinking funds that can probably explain it a little bit better than I do. But the main premise is that, if you have Christmas coming and you know that you spend $2,000 at Christmas, you can divide that by 12 and save away every single month that expense, so it doesn't feel as daunting when you're paying for it at year end. And so that is something that I track and something that you can find from the pivot table. So I'm going to go Alt-1 again to get a pivot table, hit enter twice. And what I'm going to look here is I do have a category for gifts. And so as you can tell here, G is for gifts. And so I'm going to do the date feature again and the total. And so what I can see is this is how much I've spent on gifts over the years. And so what I can do then is to make sure that I have set aside that amount during the year, or maybe, in a sinking fund, so that it doesn't feel like I can't be generous because I didn't save enough money. And it also kind of keeps you in track of, maybe I had more weddings this year or more birthdays that I celebrate and things like that. And so I think these three use cases are great for pivot tables. I can come up with a lot more because I think they are just so useful and easy to kind of see insights that you've seen here. So they can honestly help out your personal life as well as your work life. So anyway, I hope this was helpful and I will see you in my next one. Thanks so much. Bye.